Hey, Interpower Entrepreneurs, I'm your host, Dr. Amanda, and if you're a coach, expert, or service-based business owner, you're in the right place to learn law of attraction strategies that will help you break through to six figures and beyond in your business. And in this episode, you're going to learn 5 law of attraction lessons for entrepreneurs from the book called The Gap and the Gain. So this book is by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And if you haven't read it, it is one of the most killer books I've ever read on mindset. So the subtitle for this book is The High Achiever's Guide to Happiness, Confidence, and Success. So if you consider yourself a high achiever, you're going to want to read this book. The link is in the show notes, and of course you can just go to Amazon and order it. So a little context about why this book, it's because in my Law of Attraction for Entrepreneurs program, we just finished reading this book and people were mind blown. This teaches many principles that I teach in Inner Power Entrepreneur Concepts. It really aligns with my Inner Power formula, which is to recognize, reframe, repeat to reprogram. So this entire book is really a recognition and reframe tool. When you do that on repeat, you get different results. You reprogram yourself for success. So this book goes so powerfully with law of attraction. Yet in the book, Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy don't ever say the words law of attraction or the term law of attraction. They apply their background from psychology, and Dan Sullivan is a coach. So he's been a coach for a long, long time, I think over 40 years. And Dr. Benjamin Hardy is primarily an author. He's also a speaker, but he is a psychologist, a professional and organizational psychologist. So he comes from that background and brings his wealth of wisdom in that way. And it's a really cool book because it's a collaboration where these are Dan Sullivan's ideas, but then Dr. Benjamin Hardy comes in and puts his background on top of the ideas of Dan Sullivan and really creates this beautiful, I say, gift to the world. This book is, to me, now in my top 10 that I would recommend to people to read to start to change their mindset. And again, like I said, in my Law of Attraction for Entrepreneurs program, we read a book every couple of months, one book every couple of months. And so I'm constantly giving you tips, strategies, tools, always going to be framing it from the Law of Attraction perspective to help you break through to your next level in business. So if you're interested and you haven't joined us yet in the Law of Attraction program, just go to lawofattractionforentrepreneurs.com. The link is right in the show notes. If you don't know how to spell entrepreneur, I know a lot of people don't. It took me a while to remind my brain how to do it. So the link's in the show notes, lawofattractionforentrepreneurs.com. You can plug into this program for free. It's 7-day trial. There will unlock 90 lessons when you opt in, and you will see my entire summary of this book. So in several weeks, I summarize this book every Saturday. So we have a book club every Saturday. This is really a paid for podcast. So it's a community. You get master classes, coaching sessions. It's a killer program. So Law of Attraction for Entrepreneurs. I won't plug that anymore today. I just want to make sure you know that's why I'm bringing this book to you. Last time we read Think and Grow Rich, and you can go back and listen to the Inner Power Entrepreneur podcast episode that talks about my key takeaways from that book. So episode number 44. All right, so let's break into the 5 Law of Attraction lessons from The Gap and the Gain. Again, that link for the book is in the show notes. So first, this is fascinating. He talks about a stat, and he says entrepreneurs are prone to substance abuse as well as depression and suicide. Even after some massive victory, their mind quickly goes to the next unreached achievement. This is really wild to think about. I have worked with a lot of different types of entrepreneurs from all over the world and at various stages of business building. And a common thread I can see is exactly what he's talking about. Being stuck in a gap mindset where you're always focused on the next thing to achieve and you don't commonly or often celebrate your victories in the now. And so you always feel behind. So I want you to question yourself here first. Is this you? Are you always focused on future success and not enjoying the now? This is going to push away your future success. It's going to cause you to be miserable in the now. That's really the concept of this entire book. Are you in the gap or are you in the gain? So Dan Sullivan says your future growth and progress are now based in your understanding about the difference between the 2 ways in which you can measure yourself against an ideal, which puts you in what I call the gap, and against your starting point, which puts you in the gain. appreciating all that you've accomplished. So breaking this down, it's very simple. Are you measuring your success by an ideal? So you're always looking to the future, thinking, once I get to this goal, I'll be happy. Or are you measuring yourself against how far you've come, your starting point, which puts you in the gain and causes you to attract more wins? So we're just going to keep digging into that. That's the premise of this book. Here are 5 powerful quotes, and my goodness, I could have written down, probably we could have done a 6-hour episode on this book because there's so much gold in it, and I really just distilled the key takeaways that are going to be law of attraction based. So here are some quotes. The only valid comparison you can ever make is between your present and past selves. The gap between where you were and where you are now is your only true measure of progress. So measure against your starting point. Stop comparing yourself to your future ideal. Let go of that way of thinking and instead measure yourself against how far you've come to this point. Another quote, when you focus on your gap, you're living in a reality where you're never enough. When you focus on your gain, you're living in a reality of abundance and continual growth. This is really awesome because if you think about you in the law of attraction and creating rapid business growth, if you're focusing on abundance and continual growth and your wins, what you focus on expands. So that's what's going to keep expanding. If you're constantly focusing on being in the gap where you're never enough, you have imposter syndrome and you think you're not good enough and you don't sell enough and your business isn't enough and you don't offer enough, obviously you're going to be in the gap. You're going to be stuck in the ditch, feeling bad about yourself, which creates a downward spiral. He says, success is less about achieving goals and more about continually expanding your capabilities and impact. It's about who you become in the process. Ooh, this is critical. Goal mindset. This book caused me and my husband, Abe, to talk so much about goals and what the meaning of goals is and manifestation-based goals versus goals that cause you to beat yourself up. And he sums it up really nicely here. Success is less about achieving goals. So your whole business is not about just achieving goals and continuously moving the measure to the next goal. It's about enjoying the process. Are you enjoying the process of being an entrepreneur? Or are you constantly beating yourself up, wishing that you were farther along? And then right when you get to the farther along point, you move the measure again. And then it's never feeling good because you always are measuring yourself against how far you have to go instead of how far you've come. Your gap will always be insatiable. It will constantly move, keeping you in a state of dissatisfaction. But the gain is yours to celebrate. It's evidence of your growth and progress. I just talked about this. So you're going to constantly be in a state of dissatisfaction if you're in the gap. When you're in the gain, you are in a celebratory mode because you're thinking, yes, look how far I've come. Look at my wins of every day. And you just keep stacking on your wins. Another quote, the real reward of progress is not what you achieve, but who you become along the way. Embrace the journey and celebrate your gains, for they are your true makers of a life well lived, or markers of a life well lived. So the real reward of progress is not what you achieve, but who you become along the way. Are you celebrating yourself for who you're becoming during your journey of being an entrepreneur? Or are you always beating yourself up thinking it's never enough? That's gap versus gain mindset, okay? So I just wanted to give you some of those foundational principles in this book that are going to guide you in the right direction. So let's break down specifically 5 law of attraction lessons for entrepreneurs from this book. So number 1, a gain mindset keeps you on the upward spiral growth curve. So you've heard me talk about the spiral growth curve or the upward spiral growth curve, remembering that there's always going to be ups and downs. Your perspective of this is what really matters. If when you're on that down part of the spiral, you're not looking back at all of the gains that it took for you to get to where you are, you're going to then create a downward spiral. What I mean by this is it's your perception of where you're at that always matters. Your happiness is created in terms of the meaning that you make out of where you're at. So perception. So what keeps you happy in the now attracts more happiness in the now. So even when you're on the downward part of the spiral, if you are still in a gain mindset and you're thinking, that's all right, look at all the wins I got to get here. This moment when I'm on the downward part of the spiral is just causing me to expand to the next level of myself. And I couldn't get there without this part of the spiral. that mindset is so powerful. It's going to help you move through the expansion of yourself more quickly, and you're going to enjoy the whole journey instead of always wishing that you were just on the up at all points in time, which is an impossibility. You cannot grow without contrast. You cannot grow without challenge. You cannot get to the next level of yourself unless you have that downward part of the spiral. The difference between someone who's going to be gap-minded versus gain-minded is this. If you're gap-minded, you're going to see that downward part. You're going to hyper-focus on it. It's going to drag you down and keep you there for longer. If you're in a gain mindset, you're going to be thinking, awesome, this downward part means I'm on my way to the next up. And you're going to see that downward part as part of the gain process, and you're going to enjoy the journey instead of rebelling against it or resisting it and feeling stuck and frustrated. So a few key quotes on this one. He says, when your happiness is tied to something in the future, your present is diminished. Ooh, that is so important. So ask yourself, is happiness reserved for the future, but never the present? Do you continuously think I'll be happy when blank, but you're not happy in the now? Check yourself here. Recognize if that's how you are. You must reframe this, because if you keep staying stuck there, you're going to be on a journey of struggle and feeling miserable. Remember, Abraham Hicks says you can't have a happy ending to a miserable journey. It's exactly what they're talking about here. If you think you're going to be happy when you get to some point in the future, but you're not happy in the now, that's an impossibility, because you're training your mindset to be stuck in the gap. And when you're stuck in the gap, you feel out of control of your reality. You feel like a victim. Everything stinks and sucks and feels bad, and you feel powerless. And so if you want to have power and be on the upward spiral of growth and access the full potential of the law of attraction to bring you what you want consciously, get into a gain mindset. He says happiness is where you start, not where you finish. So the starting place is happiness, not the ending point. When you start with happiness, you end with happiness. When you start with happiness, the middle of the journey is happiness. So the gain gives you control, and it helps you control the meaning of the past, because you're always thinking, how did I win? What can I learn? How can I keep a gain mindset instead of getting stuck in the gap? Always measure yourself backward. Ideals can't be measured. So when you're measuring yourself backward, you're looking at what's happened to you across your life course. You could just say today, across the life course of your business building adventures, and you can measure how far you've come. What have you learned? How many skills have you created and cultivated? How many people have you connected with? How many people have you impacted? How much have you nurtured your mind and your heart and your soul by choosing to become an entrepreneur? That's gain mindset. Gap would look like, I'm not as far as I want to get. My ideal is way out here. I'm beating myself up every day to get there. I don't feel good on the journey. I'm stressed out. I'm overwhelmed, and I'm frustrated, and I feel stuck, and I'm never going to get there. But maybe when I get there, I'll be happy. That makes no sense, right? And I know this because I've been there, and a lot of people I talk to do this. I don't think I know an entrepreneur who is automatically in that mindset. They've trained themselves to be, if they're not. So when you're in a gain mindset, it's because you've trained yourself to be that way. And that's everything I teach you here. Train yourself, train your mindset, train your state of being to be programmed for success. And it takes conscious, deliberate, strategic decision and action, right? You've got to decide, I want to be enjoying this journey. Number 2. The gap mindset puts you on the downward spiral of unhappiness. So in contrast to what we talked about in number 1, a gain mindset will keep you on the upward spiral growth curve. A gap mindset puts you in the downward spiral of unhappiness. So gap thinking makes you a slave to not being enough. You always feel like there's not enough money, not enough time, not enough business coming your way, not enough everything, right? I'm not enough. What I offer isn't enough. There will never be enough time to get where I want to go. That's gap thinking. It blocks successful attraction because you're in the gap. Remember, when you are thinking negatively, you are in a lower vibrational frequency, which is going to attract more lower vibrational frequency things to you because it's just matched in the quantum field. There's no favoritism in the universal read of your energy. The universe doesn't go, oh, you shouldn't have that. Don't get stuck in the gap. Let me help you out. It just reads your energy. You're sending out a frequency. Let's say it's fear and not enoughness, which is a gap way of being. it's going to send you that matched frequency. So it's going to confirm and validate how you're feeling by sending you things that you believe to be true, which is not enoughness. This is going to cause you to continuously be on a downward spiral of unhappiness because you're trying to achieve your ideal in the future. You're always going to be in the gap. Because you're struggling in the now, you're going to stay in the gap. So the gap makes you a slave to there and makes here a prison you're trying to escape from. I love this quote. So he says, the gap makes you a slave to there and makes here a prison you're trying to escape from. My God, that is so powerful. Are you trying to escape your reality right now? If you are, rethink it. Rethink what you're creating. Get help. Hang out with me. Come work with me. Come into the Law of Attraction for Entrepreneurs program. You've got to retrain your mindset because it's not realistic to think that you're going to keep doing the same thing and get a different result. So if you've been stuck in this way of being, you need mindset help. You need to up-level your vibrational frequency. You need to learn how to access the power of the Law of Attraction and get into the gain. Okay, so I have in the book, you're going to hear my paper shuffling. I have several pages of notes from this book. It's just so powerful. And I wrote a really cool grid where on the left I have gap mindset versus gain mindset. So here are just some key concepts. So when you're in a gap mindset, nothing is ever enough. You feel disempowered. You measure yourself against an ideal that you can never get to. Your focus is going to be on lack, which means that you lose what you have because you're just going to keep going on that downward spiral. Everything you have, then you don't appreciate, it just falls away and you keep going further and further into the gap. You practice negative self-comparison. So when you're in a gap mindset, you think everyone else is better, this is better, that's better, the ideal is better. So negative self-comparison. You are creating from a state of need, and you think that something outside of yourself that's attached to something external is going to fix the problem. So there is this sense of urgency and desperation that gets created when you're in the gap. You have narrowed options because when your brain goes into gap thinking, you start to hyper-focus in black and white ways, thinking there are limited possibilities and limited solutions. You're going to be externally driven, which means that you're driven toward outer success instead of knowing that it comes from within. You feel this obsessive passion and desperation, almost like an addiction level of want for success. You make short-sighted decisions because you aren't able to allow yourself to sit in the, let's say, the journey of the now as an entrepreneur. And so you want things to get done fast and easily. And when they don't, you start to get obsessed with it happening faster. It's a neediness feeling. You have short-term thinking. You're a slave to need. You're trying to fill the gap by freeing yourself from something. So in a gap mindset, you are trying to escape the present moment, right? Remember this quote where he said, it makes the here a prison you're trying to escape from. Oh, it's so powerful. You're avoiding here while trying to get there, and you never arrive. And when you're in the gap mindset, trauma has a hold on you as a victim. You feel like a victim. Now, this is counter to the gain mindset. So a gain mindset is obviously going to be a high vibe law of attraction mindset. In the gain mindset, you are active, meaning you take action to improve, whereas in the gap, you're passive. So you feel like you're enough. You're always progressing. You feel empowered in a gain mindset. You measure yourself against tracked progress. You focus on what you have, which makes you gain what you lack. Wild to think about. So you focus on what you have, and then you have gains. Instead of when you focus on what you don't have, you push away the things you want. When you focus on what you have, you attract more of what you already are and what you're focusing on, which is being in the gain. You're always winning when you're in the gain because you're thinking about what there is to learn. You're thinking about what you have learned. You're thinking about how you've won. You are focused on the positive. You are more focused on wants. You're not needy. You're focusing on abundance and what you want to attract to you. You're committed and you're detached from the timeline. You're detached from feeling like you have to have it now. So you create expansive opportunities and you're internally inspired instead of obsessively passionate. So when you're obsessively passionate, you have this burning desire that is negative because it's causing neediness and impatience. Whereas when you're in the gain, you're internally inspired, meaning that this force comes from within. The decision, the commitment attracts to you what you're inspired by. You have harmonious inspiration. He calls it harmonious passion. I don't love the word passion because it means to suffer, so I always use the word inspiration, but he calls the difference between gap, he says it's obsessive passion versus gain would be harmonious passion. So when you're in a state of harmonious passion, which would be gain-minded, you're intuitive, you're thoughtful, you're purposeful. So are you inspired? Are you intuitive? Are you thoughtful? Are you purposeful? Do you have a long-term focus? This creates a feeling of freedom and harmony with what you want, knowing you don't actually need it. So you drop the neediness and you attract what you want. You are healing your trauma, and you know that you've healed your trauma when you see it as a gain. So if you see the quote unquote bad things that have happened to you in the past and you feel that they're a gain, you've healed your trauma. That's a gain mindset. That's you looking to the past and looking for lessons from the things that have happened to you, looking for the wins, looking for the upsides so that you can get into a gain mindset. So that's the difference between gap and gain. Remember, when you're in the gain, you're going to be on an upward spiral growth trajectory. When you're in the gap, you're going to be on a downward spiral of unhappiness. I've called this before a shitstorm. So you feel like crap is just coming your way. You're a crap magnet. And then you complain about the crap that's coming your way. And then it just causes you to attract more crap. And then you're on a downward spiral growth curve instead of an upward one. So gap is going to keep you stuck in the shitstorm. We don't want that, right? We want to be in the gain outcomes where you're abundant and prosperous and flowing and innovative and free and inspired. And you feel good because you're always focused on your wins. Okay? So number 3, so this is the third law of attraction lesson that I got from this book specific to entrepreneurs. So embrace wants and let go of your attachment to needs. So needing keeps you in the gap, looking to fill voids. Okay. When you're in the gap, you are thinking that something outside of you can make you happy. So you keep seeking the outer success to be happy inside. You've heard me say this many times if you've been with me. Your outer world is a reflection of your inner world. If you don't like what you're getting on the outside, change what's within. This is exactly what he's talking about here. Needing keeps you in the gap, looking to fill voids. Those voids are created by you thinking that something outside of yourself is going to make you feel better. So then you get into this state of always seeking something outside of yourself, and you can't control everything outside of you. It's very challenging to control the outer world. It's easy to control yourself. Well, we'll say it can be easy to control yourself if you decide and commit and take action every day. You'll notice that things start to change. You can make it very hard by wanting to control the outer world, thinking that something outside of me will fill this void and make me feel better. When you no longer need what you want, you're able to get it. This is a wild concept, and it's such an interesting paradox because we think clinging to the thing we want means that we're going to attract it to us, when reality of the law of attraction or the universal principles of the law of attraction are actually that when you let go of the clinging and the grip on it, it comes to you. The reason for this is because there's always two sides. There's the thing you think you want that you're chasing, and the flip side of what you're afraid you don't have. And when you're clinging, you're actually focused on not having it. If you're not clinging, you're letting go of the grip, you're letting go of need, and instead you're attracting it through want, through desire, through fun, through magnetism that's positive instead of clingy, needy, and fearful. Okay, so embrace wants and let go of your attachment to needs. A really great way to play with this is that you want to hyper focus on what you already have created. This is gain mindset. When you're in a gain mindset, you're thinking, what are all the wins I've already created? And you want to do this every single day. He advocates in the book to have a wins journal. And I started this practice when I read this book, and it is awesome. So on Amazon, they have journals that are called 1 line a day journals, and it's room for a couple lines. I got one of these, and every night at the end of the day, I just write down my wins. And so this practice keeps you focused on the positive. It keeps you focused on the gains. And so every night, just write down your wins. You could, of course, do this on a spreadsheet. You could do it on a piece of paper. You could do it in your current journal, or you could get a 1 line a day journal. I like it because it gives me a comparative analysis of the preceding years, and then it also just is a one journal with one focus. So there's a fun strategy to try if you want to. The point here is that you're going to be focusing on your wins. This keeps you in a gain mindset. It keeps you attracting more wins because that's what you're focusing on. And you're letting go of beating yourself up for thinking you haven't gotten far enough because you're constantly focusing on how you've already won. When you're focusing on what you've already won, you can't be in the gap because you are abundance minded. You're thinking, I love what I've created. I'm doing awesome every day. I'm taking action every day. And this creates a higher vibrational frequency. It creates your clearer focus on what you want to expand, which is more wins. So that's a strategy to help you embrace wants, let go of needs, stop being needy, thinking that in the future, when I get to this thing and I need it to be successful, then I'm somehow going to be happy. And this ties really well to number 4. Happiness is your starting point for setting goals. Okay, great quote here. He says, happiness is your starting point, and you've expanded the center by achieving the goal. So it's a constant outward expansion of happiness. So happiness is your starting point when you set a goal. You expand the happiness when you achieve the goal, and it's a constant outward expansion of happiness. This ties back to number 1, the upward spiral growth curve. When you start with a place of power and you decide, I'm going to just keep expanding. I'm going to keep growing. I'm going to keep celebrating my wins. I'm going to play through the challenges and I'm going to keep focusing on that upward spiral growth curve. Then happiness is your starting point. It's your center point. It's your side point. It's your down point. It's your up point, because you're always focusing on expansion. And you know that to expand, you've got to have all parts of the spiral, all parts of the growth curve. And so you are constantly experiencing expansion, and your mindset, when it's gain focused, is helping you be in happiness. So there's a really great concept in this book that ties powerfully to this conversation, and it's called the hedonic treadmill. So he says, being on the hedonic treadmill keeps you always chasing future happiness. And there's research to show that high achievers tend to stay on the hedonic treadmill. And what that means is that they are always moving the ideal into the future and setting goals and thinking that they'll be happy once they get there. But right when they get there, we adapt very quickly. So the key term is hedonic adaptation. And it keeps you on the hedonic treadmill. So you adapt right when you win, you adapt to the new level that you're at, and then you set the bar again into the future. And so you're always on the treadmill seeking future success. This is very powerful because this ties back to that opening quote where we were talking about entrepreneurs being prone to substance abuse and depression and suicide, because even after a massive victory, their mind goes quickly to the next unachieved result that they're looking for, or the next unreached achievement. So be conscious. Is this you? Are you prone to, we could just say, addictive behaviors, or behaviors like substance abuse that aren't keeping you high vibe? Are you feeling depressed? Are you feeling like this isn't worth it? Because you keep moving on that hedonic adaptation scale, you keep moving the goal out to the next point, and you never celebrate yourself, and you think there's always more to accomplish. I see this so frequently. It's like, oh, remember when you said, oh, if I could just get a client, that would be so awesome. And then you get one, and then you go, oh, now if I could just get 3. Oh, now if I could get to 5K months. Oh, now 10K. And then you get to 10K, and then you're like, oh, 20K. And you just keep moving it out and out and out and out. And then you're always seeking future success and never happy and present in the now. That's the hedonic treadmill. You've heard me talk about it as the treadmill of BS. So you get stuck on the treadmill of BS and you just keep running harder and harder and harder, but you kind of stay in the same place because the level of success keeps going up, but you're just pushing just as hard. And so you're always thinking that when you get to some point, you'll be happier, but then you never get there. So this is be, do, have. You're thinking, and when I have that thing, I'll be happy, and then I'll do what I want. When in actuality, it's be happy now, do the things that inspire you, and you'll have all the success that you desire. So happiness is your starting point for goal setting. You don't need to prove yourself. You don't need to be stuck on the treadmill. You want to start playing with happiness in the now. So a great question here is, do you have a long enough timeline to truly slow down and enjoy being here? Or are you trying to quickly get there? This is a powerful one. I journaled about this because it's so incredible to think about patience in growing a business. I can tend to be impatient and get frustrated, and I go, but I want this and I want that, and why isn't it happening fast enough? Is this you? Do you resonate? And so, this is where you want to really ask yourself, what timeline would make me feel happy in the now? And for me, this was a huge conversation with me and Abe because we set a goal up to have a 100K month by the end of 2024. And I've noticed at the beginning of this year, it's putting so much pressure on me. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't like this feeling. Why do I need to freak out about the timeline? If I know my success is inevitable in my business and I keep taking strategic daily action and I have that goal in mind, so it's a marker, it's a point that I'm getting to. It's my vision, it's my goal, it's what I see myself moving toward, it's how I want to make more impact. But if I just stretch the timeline or drop the timeline and don't worry about that, can I enjoy the now more? That's manifestation-based goal setting. When you have a timeline and the details that freak you out, you're actually causing the goal to take longer to happen because you are causing resistance and stress and fear and doubt and uncertainty, or just urgency and overwhelm. And so I started to notice some of that urgency and overwhelm and feeling like, oh my God, to make that happen, and you hear the words there, make it happen, it's feeling stressed. So, we've been talking about like, how do we adjust our goals for this year and just let these things happen, still with conscious intention and goal setting, but letting go of the neediness behind it, letting go of the impatience behind it, right? So the happiness is the starting point of the setting of the goal instead of feeling like urgency, desperation, or anything overwhelming behind the goal. So ask yourself this question. It's really powerful. I'll repeat it again. Do you have a long enough timeline to truly slow down and enjoy being here? Or are you trying to quickly get there? Another thing this indicates is that you're wanting to escape the now. And because you think when I get to there, I'll be happy. So really question yourself here, recognize, and if you need to reframe, and then repeat that to reprogram yourself for law of attraction success, for being in the now, for feeling good in the now, which will cause you to enjoy the entire journey. I can't remember if I read many of Dan Sullivan's and Benjamin Hardy's books because I was so impacted by this one. And I think it was in this one. When you listen to it on Audible, they do an interview at the end of each chapter. It's really cool. And I think it was in this book, but he was talking about how when he was working with entrepreneurs, they will say, it was in his 10X book. So he has a book called 10X is Easier Than 2X. And in that book, he was asking entrepreneurs to 10X their business, and they would start freaking out and going like, but I can't do that in the next year. And he said, well, why does it have to be in the next year? And it really struck me because I thought that's how I've set goals in the past, is always a timeline. And when I do it, I'm successful, but do I enjoy the journey? And so I really reflected on this, and I've been just playing with, can I just let go of all the timelines and just play and have fun and enjoy? And for the most part, I do that in my business. I do notice that when I set timelines on really big goals, I tend to feel pressured, and that pressure causes me to not enjoy the journey. So I'm adjusting accordingly. So question yourself here and play with the right timeline for you that causes you to enjoy the journey versus feeling pressured and overloaded. Okay. Number 5, celebrate your wins daily to stay in the game. So this goes back to the wins journal that I was talking about. Think of your life right now. What are all the gains you can think of? Think of your business right now. What are all the gains you can think of? Spend an hour writing down all the gains you've had already just this year. So the time of this recording, this is going out on the March 20th of 2024. So just think about all the wins you've already had for quarter 1 of 2024. Think of all the wins you've had for your entire journey as an entrepreneur. Think of the wins you've had in the last 10 years, and it will blow your mind. If you just ask yourself, where was I 10 years ago today? So whenever you're listening to this, just use the date today and say, where was I 10 years ago today? And write down all of the things you've experienced, all the things you've accomplished. This will take some time, and it will blow your mind. And you will automatically get into a gain mindset where you go, wow, I have won so much. And you want to keep doing this on repeat. That's why the daily wins journal is so powerful. It helps you reframe your past challenges. It gives you feedback about how you're winning. It reminds you to stay in the game. I love this quote by Joseph Campbell that they include in the book. He says, the meaning of life is whatever you ascribe it to be. The meaning of life is whatever you ascribe it to be. Oh, that's a gold mine right there. What meaning are you ascribing right now to where you're at in business? What meaning are you ascribing to how much money you have in the bank? What meaning are you ascribing to yourself as an entrepreneur? Really sit with these questions because they will change you from the inside out and cause you to start to attract success from a state that's balanced, from a state of love for yourself and all that you've accomplished, from a state of power and clarity about how awesome you are. The fact that you're listening to this right now and you care about helping the world through building a business that offers value to people is amazing. The fact that you're courageous enough to listen to this, to grow yourself, to help other people is incredible. You are an incredible human being who cares about your life being good and fulfilling and helping other people's lives be good and fulfilling. That's what entrepreneurship is. You're bringing solutions and value to people in the world through an exchange of knowing what their problems are and then bringing solutions. That is really, really cool. Value yourself. You are an amazing human who's shining your light, who's courageous enough to do it. Not everyone is courageous enough to do this. You are. Reward yourself. Notice your wins. Notice your gains. Be gain-minded. Celebrate yourself. Celebrate this journey. You are a rock star. I wish I was there to give you high fives and a giant hug, tell you how awesome you are, to be gain-minded. One last reminder, if you haven't entered into my Law of Attraction for Entrepreneurs program, just go to lawofattractionforentrepreneurs.com. The link is in the show notes. I would love to see you there. I teach lessons like this every single day. It's a really incredible program, very low cost, and it will rock your world. We just finished this book, The Gap and the Gain, and the next book we're reading is my I Am a Money Magnet book, and we're doing deep dive into the 100 journaling questions in that book on money mindset. So get in there. Let's hang out together. Let's recap today's 5 Law of Attraction lessons for entrepreneurs from The Gap and the Gain. Number 1, a gain mindset keeps you on the upward spiral growth curve. The gap mindset puts you on a downward spiral of unhappiness. Don't be a crap magnet. Number 3, embrace wants and let go of your attachment to needs. Number 4, happiness is your starting point for setting goals. And number 5, celebrate your wins daily to stay in the gain. And until next time, I'm sending you giant hugs and inner power high fives.